Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it is official. UK prisons are not full to capacity because of anything the government has done, not because they freed a load of prisoners early and then they all got banged up again. No, 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 no. It's because Mr. Sir Keir, I refused to prosecute Jimmy Savile while he was alive, Starmer, is tough on crime, including the previous Conservative government. Who would have thunk it, eh? Where do I get this knowledge from? The font of all knowledge, the font of truth, I might add, the BBC. If the BBC says it, then it's obviously true. Successive governments trying to look tough on crime have driven the rise in prison population, which forced the early release of thousands of inmates last year, a review suggests. The report by the Independent Sentencing Review found governments over the past 25 years jailed more criminals despite evidence it does not prevent reoffending. Well, I actually agree with this paragraph. Well, I agree with every paragraph. It's the BBC, the font of truth. Hallelujah. But this one especially because many years ago, in recent memory, a life sentence, I sentenced you to life with a recommendation that you serve, used to be 10, 15 years was the average. Now, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. The murder's got any worse? Is there a special reason why the tariffs have got longer and longer and longer? It's easy to guess and wonder that it's easy for a politician to blame another politician and say prisons are like this because of him. If you elect me, I will punish those dirty, no good prisoners more. And then no one likes prisoners anyway, so they'll go, yeah, vote for that, vote for that. And then they get in and then they lose their job and blah, 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 blah. You might believe that, you might not. Some people do, some people don't. I always think, well, how are you going to get someone to do a good job? They just move around from job to job, don't they, politicians? It's like, well, how can you become an expert if you're just spending 2 years there, 2 years there, 2 years there? I'm an expert in the economy. I'm an expert in prison. I'm an expert in health. But the BBC says it's so. I suppose it must. The review, led by former Lord Chancellor David Gooke, who also found there were knee-jerk decisions to issue longer sentences in an effort to show government action. Yeah, it sort of still leads into my previous thing about the sentences getting longer and longer and longer. I mean, you get sentenced for praying outside a abortion clinic nowadays, don't you? True story. Some mum was standing there silently, lips weren't even moving, praying. The police said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm praying for the aborted baby in there, or the aborted babies." They arrested him. That might be why jails are full. How many sort of people are in there for exercising what they thought was free speech? What about turning up to rallies, demonstrating, getting weighed off then? Not all demonstrators though, only some. But there's always spaces for those demonstrators, those naughty, dirty demonstrators, and those free people that want to pray outside of abortion clinics. Who do they think they are? There's always room for them. Can I just say, in my experience, as a quick one, people think that people on the street are just let off. They get arrested and they just get let off. In my experience, every time you ever get arrested, you get nicked, and you go to court, and you probably end up going to jail for it. I don't know where this myth has come from that everyone gets let off. I can see the problems nowadays getting worse with less police on the street, but that's sort of an obvious thing, isn't it? If there's less police, there's going to be more crime. That sort of goes hand in hand. London, no one wants to go into London anymore. Phone jackers, this, that. It 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 let it'd be let to get so out of control, probably around the rich areas where then they're forced to do something. They don't care if that thing happens around Romford or Arundel or something, do they? Kensington, Chelsea, there'll be a massive upsurge in crime. Everyone will come out and say you've got to sort this problem, and everyone will be like, yeah, and they'll come out with some really harsh sentences that will affect everybody in the whole of England and the United Kingdom. And everyone will go, yeah, and then everyone starts getting nicked, and they go, what? Well, you vote for it, mate. Anyway, Mr. Gook warned that unless radical changes are made this year, prisons in England and Wales could run out of cells again by 2026. I mean, this is just the same old story. You go back to like the 1960s, and they were saying the cells were going to run out. The cells are always going to run out, because then there's more money for more cells, and it's only a matter of time before once again prison numbers will exceed capacity. Mr. Gook told the BBC's Radio 4 Today programme. England and Wales has one of the highest population of prisoners in Western Europe, according to the report, and one of the highest crime rates. Despite an overall decline in crime since the mid-90s, England and Wales' prison population has almost doubled between 1993 and 2012, the review found, while reoffending has stayed stubbornly high. Again, I keep saying it, let out people without anywhere to live, and they're going to be stubbornly high, in every sense. Doesn't feel like it with all the new laws that get brought out all the time about no praying outside in a clinic, or don't demonstrate in, but you can demonstrate in. An overall decline in crime. I wonder what crimes have declined. I suppose a lot of because everything's on CCTV, there's scanners, there's sensors. So I suppose a lot of crimes have just died out, but the ones that are carrying on are... The government launched an early prisoner release scheme in September last year as part of an emergency plan to tackle overcrowding. It saw eligible prisoners serving more than 5 years automatically released after only 40% of their fixed term sentence, rather than the usual 50%. When you read it like that, 40% rather than 50%, it's not like the biggest touch in the world, is it? The government then commissioned the report to examine how prisons became so full, and to consider ways to ease overcrowding by giving tougher punishments outside the prison. The recommendations of this panel are due in the spring, and they will be groundbreaking. Groundbreaking? They will be brown, and they will be breaking. They'll be shit. They might even be groundbreaking as well. The review found that the early release scheme freed up enough spare cells for newly remanded or convicted criminals, but the headroom will disappear by next year, even with more prison places being built. Oh. What's Mr. Gook got to say? Last year we were confronted with the consequences of decades of haphazard policy making and underinvestment in the criminal justice system, bringing it to the brink of collapse. I know, but they don't ever do nothing else, innit? The amount of times I've asked for a DRR or a DRO or whatever, or a community sentence, or a sentence in the community, and they go, we've never given you that chance before, why would we even do it now? Jail. That's a goddamn... You go there and you meet these proper geezers, like one tooth in their head, you know what I mean? Shriveled up, looking like a twiglet on the side of the road, you know what I mean? You go, yeah, I had a DRI 8 times. Yeah, how? They wouldn't give it to me. You know what I mean? They think it's good enough for you, they won't give it to me. Who did you grass on? Who was you? Anyway. He said the system had failed victims in that while punishment would always be a central aim of the criminal justice system, prison is not the only form of punishment. I've already read that. But some things are so good they just need to be said twice. Figures show that almost 6 out of 10 offenders jailed for less than a year go on to break the law again, a cycle of criminality that had been feeding more and more people into the prison system. Look, I'm not saying let out every prison. I'm not saying every prisoner deserves to be let out. Free the ones that do deserve it, by the way. But there's no point in these year and less jail sentences, because you're not going to get nothing done behind there. You're not going to learn nothing. You're not going to learn about rehabilitation, which jail's meant to be about. There's not going to be any time, because you're going to get a year and do 6 months, or even less if you get tagged. There's going to be no time to sort out a place to live and this and that. You're not going to sort out any of your demons, any of your addictions. And you're just going to get out and you're going to reoffend again. So there's no point. These year sentences, if you've got a drug addiction, they should say, right, we're going to send you to rehab for 2 years. Jail for a year, rehab for 2 years. Or, if you've got some other sort of problem, we're going to send you to a psychiatrist for whatever. year sentences and less are rubbish because you don't do the full year anyway. In contrast, fewer community sentences have been handed out by courts, and there has been decades of underinvestment in probation teams who are charged with offenders in the community and even rehabilitation programs. As a consequence, more money has been spent on emergency overcrowding measures, including building more jails rather than on punishment in the community, and cheaper programs aimed at stopping offending in the first place. Because jails generate a lot of that. People don't realise. Mr. Gook told the BBC that the last 30 years has seen something of a bidding war between political parties as to who is prepared to lengthen sentences the most. As a consequence, we've seen our prison population essentially double over that time. Doubles every decade, mate. When has it never doubled? When has it not gone up? We now have the highest incarceration rate in Western Europe, and with that comes consequences. Consequences, not least the fact that prison is a pretty expensive place, baby. Right, Slingy Hook. Labour urged to challenge ECHR, European Court of Human Rights, on deporting foreign criminals amid Britain's prison population crisis. Right, so they're moaning and saying the European Court of Human Rights stops us deporting all these prisoners. Right, just as a quick one. Prisoners are meant to get the vote. The European Court of Human Rights has said it as well. Yeah, every prisoner in Europe is meant to get a vote on who's in charge. Yet England ignore that and take the fine every year. They ignore it. David Cameron made a big deal out of it. We're not letting prisoners vote, and they just ignored it and they paid a fine. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying they paid a fine. Why can't they pay the fine on this? Why do they make out they can't ignore this? You know what they make out they can't. Chalk, not Gawk, has called for the UK to challenge the European Court of Human Rights over restrictions on deporting foreign prisoners to countries like Afghanistan. Mr. Chalk questioned whether returning offenders to certain regions of Afghanistan truly constituted torture or human or degrading treatment. If you're from there, you know, it's not like sending the geezer from Spain there if he's been naughty. If you're from there, innit? And then you break the law, you've got to get a grip. You can't say, oh well, they do that to people that are gay. Oh, all right, you're married with 8 kids, mate. So go back.